Hello, my name is Lisa and I'm 39 years old. My family's just went through some pretty intense things and I wanted to share it with someone, so here I am. Let me start off by introducing you to my husband, George. George and I met 12 years ago through work. At the time we had been co-workers and we worked on a lot of projects together. We spent a lot of late nights sipping watered-down coffee and talking while trying to complete big projects. One thing led to another and we developed massive feelings for each other. We began dating after I had left the company for another better opportunity. Even though we no longer worked together, we still managed to enjoy each other's company the same way we did before. My not working there only made it easier for us to talk a lot about things that didn't involve work. We dated for around 3 years before deciding to tie the knot. I was ecstatic to marry him because he was the only person who truly ever understood me on such a personal level. About 3 years after being married, we decided to have a child because we were finally financially stable enough to afford to have one. It didn't take long to get pregnant and I had my first child, Luke, pretty soon. Now, let me introduce you to my mother-in-law, Millie. Millie and I didn't generally get along. She had this thing where she felt like I was stupid and constantly tried to prove that. She kept trying to one-up me whenever I said anything. She was also one of those people that didn't believe in modern medicine. I remember there was this one time that I got this wound from an accident on my way to Millie's place that ended up getting infected really bad. And she insisted that adding mud to it would make it better. Thankfully, George had some sense in him and took me straight to the ER. And that was only one incident of many. She preferred to endanger any life, including hers, until the last possible minute, rather than get properly treated. Anyway, I kept my distance from her, although George was not a big fan of that. When Luke was born, I made it imperative to George that there was no way that I was letting Millie be alone with our child at any point. I need to tell you something that I've been thinking about for a very long time.
Yes?
Well, I don't want Millie to be alone with Luke at any point in his life.
What? Why?
If Luke gets seriously injured, I know for sure she would not rush him to the hospital. Instead, she would only make it worse. She only believes in any bogus she hears or reads online, and I do not want my son exposed to any of that.
Oh, come on, don't make her out to be some crazy woman.
I'm not. I'm literally giving you the facts. I'm sorry you don't see it that way, but that is the truth.
You can't deprive my mother of seeing her grandchild, though. What will I say to her?
I'm not saying that she won't get to see Luke. I'm just saying that one of us should be present in the same room as them whenever she's over.
I don't like it one bit, and I don't think she will either.
Well, it's either this or she never visits. She has no choice. George sulked a lot after that, and Millie also threw a huge tantrum about it, but I was not willing to change my mind. Eventually, they both decided to listen to me. When Luke was about 1 year old, we found out that he was severely allergic to peanuts. It wasn't a life-threatening allergy, but as a baby, it could really get bad for him. We made sure to purge the house of every peanut item and deep clean it to avoid cross-contamination. I made sure to inform everyone about Luke's allergy, including Millie, who did not believe that Luke had an allergy.
What nonsense! Allergies aren't real.
You can have your views, but I don't want you bringing anything with peanuts around my place. Every time you enter, I will have you wash your hands.
Gosh, these new age parents freak out about everything. You're telling me this child will grow up without ever getting to taste a PB&J, the classic child's favourite food?
Yes. It's sad that he'll never be able to have it, but it'll be even sadder to not have a life if he did ingest it.
I don't think you realise how stupid you are. Great.
I don't even want to. Just listen to the rules or never come over.
I will prove you wrong.
Just wait. Even though Millie did threaten me, she never actually did anything. I was super careful whenever she was around. I made sure she left her bags away from Luke and washed her hands properly. But then about a year later, when I had let my guard down, Millie had fed my child some crushed peanuts to prove that I was stupid for believing in allergies. Thankfully,
A quick trip to the ER negated any bad effects for Luke, but I was angry. I knew that something had to be done. Millie had endangered the life of our child to harm me. There was no stopping her in any way. I knew what needed to be done, and that was cutting off all contact with her. Of course, if we tried to do it ourselves, she would just harass us. I knew just how to get her to stop talking to us. I emailed her a copy of the baby footage from our baby monitors that showed her trying to purposely feed my son peanuts. I told her that if she ever contacted us again until I approached her, I would take the evidence to the police and expose it to the rest of her family. Thankfully, she took that threat seriously and didn't get in contact for a while. George didn't know about what I had done because I knew exactly how he was going to respond. He was going to defend his mother, and I was going to have none of it. He only got curious about his mother's lack of contact when she hadn't called him for either his birthday or the holidays. We happened to be talking about it when I revealed what I had done. I decided it was time for him to know. Plus, depending on the way he reacted, I would decide if I wanted to continue to be with him and raise my child around someone who valued someone else over them.
It's odd, right?
What is?
My mum hasn't called for way too long. Like, she hasn't called for around 6 months. Doesn't that seem unlike her?
Right. About that.
Oh no, what did you do, Lisa? I swear to God if you did or said something messed up.
No, I didn't yet.
Yet?
Yeah, so, remember the day that Luke ended up in the hospital because he went into anaphylactic shock?
Yeah.
Well, your mum had come over that day when you were at work. When I had my back turned, she tried to force-feed Luke peanuts. Thankfully, I turned back in time and managed to get most of the nuts out of his mouth.
What? You're lying! Why would she try to harm her own grandson?
Apparently, she thought I was lying about the allergy. She thought I was being crazy and wanted to prove him a point to me. She said she was going to post it everywhere, that I was a controlling parent who didn't let her child eat anything.
Oh my God, why didn't you tell me?
Because I promised her that I wouldn't tell anyone, granted she left us alone.
And she readily listened?
Yeah, because I had video footage from the baby monitor of her force-feeding Luke the peanuts. I threatened to release the video and take legal action.
Oh, do you know when she'll continue talking to us?
I told her not to contact us until I contacted her. I'm not ready to forgive her anytime soon, so that will be a while.
All right. I'm just glad that both you and especially Luke are okay. Thank you for taking care of us this way.
We're family, and we've got to protect each other this way. Seeing George react so calmly and normally made me feel a lot more secure about the relationship. I would not have been able to handle it if he actually did side with his mother. He would never have truly understood the panic I felt when I had to forcefully yet carefully extract the rest of the peanuts from Luke's mouth. Although George did seem upset for the next few days, he still seemed to think that I made the right call. He asked to see the video, and he just sighed and shook his head. We talked a lot about his feelings regarding going no contact with his mother, and he told me that, while he did appreciate me taking action, he did not like being kept in the dark for so long. I apologized a lot for that, and pretty soon we were back to being a happy couple and a happy family. After a year, I figured that was enough time to get back in contact with Millie. But she told me to never bother with contacting her ever again. She told us that she had moved out of the US and was doing well. After that, George and I tried over and over again to get in touch, but her number did not exist. We freaked out at first, but she did sound like she was doing fine over the phone, so we slowly let go of our worries. We never heard back from her for a long time. Before I knew it, 5 years had passed. Luke had grown into a wonderfully sweet boy who had this laugh that made every gloomy day bright and every bright day even brighter. George and I were both doing amazingly well in our careers. We quit our previous jobs and found better jobs with better pay and benefits. We were able to purchase new cars for ourselves and even managed to enroll Luke in a good private school. It was a random day when I noticed that George was acting very weird. He seemed very spaced out and couldn't pay attention to anything for longer than 5 seconds. I tried to talk to him initially, but he seemed way too out of it to respond, so I figured he needed some space. I didn't ask him anything more afterward, but I did make sure to comfort him in any way I could. The rest of the day went on with George being weird. I tucked Luke into bed and made sure he was fast asleep before approaching George about his behaviour all day. But before I could, I realised that he too had fallen asleep. I tried to talk to him again the next day, but he wouldn't really respond and was evasive. I began to get scared that something really bad happened. George was never one to hide anything from me. That was one of the best parts of our relationship. We were never afraid to voice our thoughts, and neither of us judged the other for what they said. To see him withdraw so much was scary. One night, after enduring around 4 days of this weird and withdrawn behaviour, I decided to properly confront George about his behaviour. "That's enough now."
"Huh? What is?"
"Your behaviour is weird, and I've been trying my best to be understanding and comforting, but I'm going to need something to work with here."
"What do you mean? Everything's fine."
"No, it isn't. You're scaring me. You seem so distant and you're constantly in your head. You don't even notice anything that's happening around you."
"Really? Well, I must admit that I haven't been feeling so good."
"Why? What's wrong?"
I'm scared to tell you."
"Go on, tell me. I won't get mad at you."
"It's not you getting mad that I'm worried about."
"What is it then? Whatever it is, I promise you that I'll do my best to handle it right." I was scared that something was horribly wrong. At that moment, only the worst possible scenarios ran through my mind. I hoped desperately that George hadn't landed us into some immense debt or gotten into some trouble with the law. George remained silent for a long while. With every minute that passed, my anxiety got worse and the scenarios in my head got worse. Eventually, George seemed to snap out of whatever trance he was in. He looked at me, and I knew he was contemplating telling me about whatever was on his mind, so I did my best to look inviting and comforting. He sighed, and I knew he was ready to tell me.
So?
So?
My mum called me a week ago."
"What? Why didn't you tell me?"
"I didn't say anything because I knew that this was how you'd react."
"You're right, I'm sorry. Please tell me what she said."
"She told me that she recently got diagnosed with cancer and is currently on her deathbed."
"Cancer?"
"Yeah, apparently she's got throat cancer and she wants me to come visit her to fulfill one last wish of hers."
"Where is she?"
"In the Maldives."
"So she's dying of cancer in the Maldives? She's been receiving treatment there for how long?"
3 years.
"Don't you think that's a bit odd?"
"I mean, healthcare is expensive here. Maybe she went there because it was cheap."
"But she chose to go to a very touristy destination. She could have gone to Japan, Thailand, or even India."
"Listen, I don't know about the specifics, but that's what she told me. What should I do?"
"I don't think you should go. Something seems off. Just at least let me gather some information about it, and then we'll make a decision. Just give me a few days." George looked disappointed, but he dropped the topic. I knew that he would end up having the same conversation again pretty soon, because he would not be able to get it out of his head. I know I sounded insensitive at that point, but I swear I felt it in my gut that something was horribly wrong. Even though I knew that Millie was kind of a nut when it came to medicine, I knew well enough that if there was a serious condition, she would be rushed to the best hospital, and I was not trying to bash Maldives' healthcare system either. I had many friends who lived there who constantly told me about how good it was. Yet for Millie to travel all the way there and get treated there seemed very odd. Even if she had been there on vacation, why would she not have gone someplace else instead of remaining there? So the next day I decided to call one of my good friends from college who was from the Maldives and had gone back home to ask her if there was any way she could help me out with finding out information about my mother-in-law. She was more than ready to help me. I sent her a couple of pictures and explained the situation to her. She told me she would try her best, but she could make no promises. She asked me to give her a couple of days at least. I readily agreed with everything she said. Yes, I know it was stupid to ask one person to search a barrage of islands for one person, but I had faith in her considering she came from a very, very influential family. In the week that it took for my friend to get back to me, George continued to act distant. In fact, he was even more distant than before. I tried talking to him many times, but unlike last time when he was simply spaced out, This time he was actually ignoring me. I tried to reason with him and remind him of his mother's various antics in the past, including the time she severely harmed our son. But none of that got through to him. Something in my gut told me that he was still consistently talking to her, and she was probably feeding him some lies. Even if I did snoop through his phone and saw call logs indicating their calls, there would have been no proof of Millie purposely talking crap about me. I just needed proof of Millie's health to give to George. True to her word, my friend called me a week later, and what she told me was shocking. She told me that with her dad's help, she was able to get records of all the cancer patients in all the various hospitals in the island, and Millie's name wasn't on any of them. However, after a little more digging, she found out that Millie had been in jail for the past year for drug smuggling and drug abuse. That was the last thing I had expected. I was sure that Millie had only invited George over to get him involved in her business, the same one that landed her in jail. My friend sent me the proof of it all, and I sat with George that night to discuss the truth. He seemed spaced out and didn't seem to care. I figured that I'd just give him some time. When I woke up the next morning, the bed was empty. That was odd, considering it was the weekend. We always stayed in a little longer. On George's bedside table there was a note that said he had gone to the Maldives to meet his mother one last time before she died. I was furious at him. How could he just up and leave behind my back without even telling me? Even after I told him about all his mother's lies, and that, if he did leave, he would be putting us in danger too, he still chose to go. Since he had shown me his true colours, there was no way I was going to let that slide. I knew that since it was the end of the month, he had none of his own money left to spend, so he must have used our joint account to book his ticket. A quick look through his emails confirmed that he only booked a one-way ticket. I did not want him to come back when he so clearly would put his mother over the safety of his family. I withdrew all the money from our joint account, which would take away his only way to get back home. I did realize that a large chunk of money had gotten withdrawn too, probably to fund his mother. That only made me even more furious. I blocked him everywhere because I did not want to have to deal with his constant calls and messages. I packed all of my and Luke's things and took off to my parents' place. If and when George did manage to come back, I did not want him to see us. When we turned up at my parents' place, they were understandably concerned, but I explained what had happened, and they were concerned for George, although they stood with my decision. It took about a week before I got a call from an international number. I immediately knew that it was George, and I contemplated picking up the call because I really did not want to deal with him. However, I gave in and decided to talk to him purely because I was very curious about what had happened. "Lisa, thank God you picked up." "Yes, what do you want?" "Lisa, I made a horrible mistake by coming here." "Yes, I told you not to go. I tried many times to reason with you, but you never listened." "I know. I want to come back, but I don't have any money." "Yes, I know. Please just help me out this once. I promise to never go against you ever again." "Look, I would help you, but you've shown me time and time again that you'll always place your mother over everyone else in your life, even if that means endangering them because of her. I didn't realize just how bad my mother's drug addiction was. She tried to get me to smuggle in drugs for her. Please just help me out this once. Let this be a lesson for you, George. Find your way back home. You did this to yourself. Lisa, please. Goodbye and good luck." It felt heartbreaking to do that to him, but he should have known better. Millie was never one to rationalize anything. I was sure that somebody had recommended drugs to her as a solution to some pain in some manner. She ended up smuggling things to a whole other country, where she got caught and now had to spend the rest of her life in prison. It will be a while before she can get extricated from there. I was sure that George felt bad for Millie, but I also knew that he hated the entire world of substance abuse, especially considering the past he had with his dad, who was a serial drug abuser, who he and Millie had to run away from. I knew that there was no way I was going to help him, but I also knew that if my marriage ended, I would try my best to help him figure things out after. I still loved him, and I only wanted what was best for him. He did come back after another week, and he contacted me immediately after he landed. He seemed a little distant, but that was a given. I left Luke with my parents and went to pick him up. The
drive back to our place was silent, and when we got home we silently walked in with his luggage. We sat down and talked for a long while. He told me that he had understood what he did was wrong, and that he should have listened to me. He told me that Millie had gotten involved with a gang, and they ratted her out when they found out she had been stealing from them. He told me that while he had been upset with my lack of help, he understood where I was coming from. He would have done the same if the roles were reversed. Protecting his family would have been his first priority. We still have a long way to go. We've planned to get couples therapy, and he will get individual therapy too, to deal with the trauma of everything he went through. It does make me sad to think that things had to go this far for him to come to his senses. But hey, it's better late than never.